When the war ends, you won't get a meaningful peace agreement. What you'll get is a frozen conflict, in all likelihood. I find it almost impossible to imagine us negotiating a peace agreement where everybody lives happily ever after. You're going to get a frozen conflict. And we in the West, with the Ukrainians, are going to go to great lengths to undermine Russia's position in the areas of Ukraine that it annexed. The Russians, on the other hand, are going to go to great lengths to precipitate and facilitate fissures inside of Europe, and they're going to go to great lengths to cause trouble in transatlantic relations. They're going to try and undermine the West. So there's going to be an intense security competition between the West and Ukraine on one side and Russia on the other side. This is not going away. Furthermore, you want to realize that there are 5 different focal points in Eastern Europe where this one can blow up again on us. One is the Black Sea. There could be a conflict in the Black Sea. 2, there could be a conflict over Moldova. 3, and this is very important, there could be a conflict over Belarus. What's going to happen when Lukashenko loses power? Are we going to try and foster a color revolution there? Oh boy. 4 is the Baltic, which is now surrounded by NATO states. It looks like a Baltic NATO lake. And then 5th, and very important, is the Arctic. There are 8 countries in the Arctic. 7 of them are members of NATO. The only one that isn't is Russia. The potential for conflict up there is very great. So I would argue that once the Ukraine war comes to an end and you have a frozen conflict, you're still going to have huge trouble involving the Russians and the West. And this is going to have serious potential for escalation and for turning into a hot war again. And of course, the Russians and the Chinese are going to remain friendly. You know, I was just talking about the fact that 7 of the 8 countries in the Arctic are NATO countries. The only one that isn't is Russia. The Russians are now working with the Chinese in the Arctic. For a long time, the Russians did not want to involve the Chinese in the Arctic. But given that they're outnumbered 7-1 up there, the Russians are bringing the Chinese with them up into the Arctic. So you can see that the Russians and the Chinese will remain friendly. The Iranians and the North Koreans will remain friendly with the Russians and the Chinese. And there is no end in sight to all the trouble that we are now in.